This is Missing Dan Nolan lesson 3. In the previous lesson, I asked you to think about these three objects and how they link to the play Missing Dan Nolan. We have a chocolate truffle cake, we have a bottle of Smirnoff vodka, and we have a fishing rod. Now, all three of these items are really key within the story. We have this chocolate cake, which was Dan's favourite cake, which, when it was his birthday, that's what they got him. At the end of the play, in section 6, they reenact this getting the birthday cake ready and getting the candles, and it's quite a sad reminder that he blew out these candles, he went out, but he never did come back to eat that chocolate cake. At the very end of the play, within the stage directions, Mark suggests that the cake stays on the stage untouched, to show the audience, just remind them that actually he has disappeared, he has gone missing, and he didn't even get a slice of his cake. So if you were asked the question about props and how they could be used in the play, that is one particular prop that is quite sentimental at the end. The second one is the bottle of vodka. As we know already that the boys stole a bottle of vodka, they took it down to the pontoon and drank it. It's a prop that links back into that theme about underage drinking, and whether that's still a relevant issue today, which it definitely is. The third and final item is the fishing rod, which again is helping us showing that social context. That was something that Dan did as a hobby. He did that with his friends. It was a fishing town. So those fishing rods really link to the whole entire play. And within the play, Mark says that it should be using minimal props. However, all three of these are props that should be used throughout the play. Before we continue with this lesson, there are some questions that you asked me from the previous lessons. So this is where the teacher answers your questions. Now, I'm not going to answer all of the questions that I was asked. I am just going to answer a couple that have come up a couple of times, or just a few that I think are quite interesting. So one of the questions was, could you tell us more about Dan's life, a little bit more in depth, and maybe some of his specific interests? So some of his specific interests that are relevant to the script were the fact that he liked to go fishing. He had an interest in music. We understood that he liked Blink 182 and his sister liked Westlife. So he was a bit of a skater, which influenced his fashion choices, his Air Force Blue DCs. All of that was influenced by his music, and the fishing really is his main interests. Can I tell you a little bit more about his life? The truth is I have to go with what I'm provided with as well. In the script, there's only so much information. I don't know Dan. I don't know exactly what he's like. I'm going from the information within the script. I'm going from my own research online about Dan. Apart from that, I really can't tell you an awful lot more than what I've told you already. A few more questions that I had was the historical contexts are not as dominant as the social or cultural. In some ways that's true, yes. In other ways that's not true. You could have a question about either the social, historical, or cultural context, and for that you need to have enough information to be able to answer that question. There is more things to talk about for the cultural and social aspects, but if you would ask the question about historical, you could talk about the technology of the time and how that applies to 2003, 2002, 2001 time. You could talk about some of the fashion in the historical context. Although I talked about that in the social and cultural, they do all kind of overlap. Another part of the historical context is the building and the place they lived and the architecture of the time. Another question I had was why certain things died out and whether I could explain. Now, the person that asked me this question, you didn't actually tell me or give me examples of what things you wanted me to talk about, but I imagined it was things such as the technology or going to people's houses and just knocking on their door to see if they were coming out or coming down the park. I think the biggest reason why those type of things died out was because of the advances in technology. Going around and just knocking on your mate's door to find out if they wanted to come to a skate park or they wanted to go fishing. Um, I think that really died out because we just got lazy and it's so much easier to text your friend or call your friend on your phone, really. Why did uh, credit phones die out, and why were they replaced with more contract phones? I think that's price. I think contract phones nowadays are so good, you can get unlimited minutes, unlimited texts, and you're not charged any extra for those. Whereas on pay as you go, you charge for every text, every call that you make. Hopefully that answers some of the questions that you asked me, and now we'll continue the rest of the lesson. The learning objective today then is to learn about the form, genre, structure and style of Missing Dan Nolan. By the end of this lesson, I should understand what form, genre, structure and style mean in relation to drama, be able to explain how the form, genre, structure and style is evident within the play Missing Dan Nolan, and answer one exam question about either the form, genre, structure or style of the play. Now, at the end of this lesson, there isn't masses of work to do. You've got a couple of questions on one sheet, and then you've got an exam question to answer as well. However, I am going to be giving you a lot of information because I want you to understand what genre, structure, style, and form mean in relation to drama. So you might want to take some notes as we go through this lesson. So the very first part then, form, genre, structure and style. What do they mean? So form is a type of written drama. It could be a play, it could be a musical, it could be a pantomime. And then we have a little look at all the different things that make a play or a musical or a pantomime and what makes them different. Genre is a type of story that is being told. For example, a comedy, a horror, a tragedy. The third one is structure. This is a shape of a play's narrative, including the order in which it's shown to an audience. So when we talk about a narrative, that's the storyline. Is it chronologically ordered? Is it going from one point in time to a later point in time, or does it jump about? And the style, which is the way in which the play is performed on stage. Now, many people get genre and style mixed up. It's really, really important that should you get a question about this, that you understand the difference. Talking about form, remember form is a type of written drama, for example, a play, a musical, a pantomime. So when we categorize something as a play, we call the form of it a play. It would have dialogue, which is either scripted or improvised between several characters. A musical is some dialogue between characters, but also some singing and some dancing. Think about Missing Dan Nolan. Is there singing and is there dancing in there? Music does not count. Mime is another form that you could have, which is where the performers should remain silent to convey meaning through movement and facial expressions. Think about in our play, is the whole thing mime? Is it completely silent? The third form that a performance could take on is a monologue, which is where one performer talks directly to the audience. So it's not a musical, it doesn't have singing, it doesn't have dancing. It's not completely silent, and it's not only one performer. So the form of Missing Dan Nolan is a play. It has dialogue which is scripted and it is between several characters. Now within there might be some mime. There also is some monologues or one character is talking, but it is mostly dialogue between several characters. Structure. So structure is the shape of a play's narrative, including the order in which it is shown to an audience. When we talk about structure, there are two main types of structure that a play would use. One is linear and the other is non-linear. Now, linear means in a straight line from beginning to end in order. You can see with the numbers that I've used to represent this, we have them from beginning to end, from number 1 to number 10 in the correct order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, non-linear means that the narrative, so the storyline, is not shown in the chronological order. So we could have something, for example, 2, 4, 10, 7, 6, 3, 1, 8, 9, 5. So if we were going to talk about those orders in terms of years and time, if we were going to have linear, so from the year 2000 to 2003, we can see that it's in a chronological order. It's in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, and that's the storyline being shown through time. If we were to have a non-linear structure, we could have 2003 jumping to 2000, jumping to 2002, and jumping to 2001. That's what we would call a non-linear. So the structure of Missing Dan Nolan is non-linear. It does not follow the order of time in chronological order. The play is divided into 6 sections, starting with the boys fishing, which then moves in section 1 to a playful argument between Dan and his sister, to his parents reflecting on when the body was found. So we've jumped there back to the point way after Dan's disappearance. Then we've got reenacting scenes that happened at an earlier point in time, and then it goes all the way to section 6, where Dan's parents are still left seeking answers to some of their questions from section 1, and again that moment when they go down to the pontoon is replayed. So the structure of Missing Dan Nolan is non-linear. It is not shown in that chronological order. So moving on to the genre then. So a genre is a type of story that is being told. For example, a comedy, horror, a tragedy. You can see lots of different types of genres on the screen now. However, Missing Dan Nolan is documentary theatre. That is the genre of Missing Dan Nolan. However, hang on a minute, it is not that simple. So documentary theatre is based on real people and real events. Missing Dan Nolan is certainly based on real people and real events. However, we also have a sub-genre to documentary theatre, which is called verbatim theatre. Now, verbatim theatre is a type of documentary theatre which uses the actual words of people from interviews and other sources. We know in this play that Mark Wheeler went to interview various different people for this play, and he is actually using those real words. I like to remember verbatim theatre and the meaning of verbatim, meaning word for word, exactly what they say and the way in which they say it. So the genre of Missing Dan Nolan is documentary / verbatim theatre. So where can this genre be seen within the play? So a couple of examples for you. The playwright Mark Wheeler interviewed Dan's parents, sister and others involved in the case and used their words to create the play, therefore showing that is verbatim theatre. In section 3, where a slideshow is used to display evidence of Dan's life through images and descriptions, that's the documentary theatre. He's using actual images and actual descriptions within the play. Again, we have at the start of the play, Wheeler emphasises that respect must be paid to those who have shared their stories and emphasises that none of the words should be changed, showing that verbatim style there as well. Now, remember, when we are talking about genre, we could say the genre of Missing Dan Nolan is documentary theatre, or that the style of Missing Dan Nolan is verbatim theatre, but it also works with a /documentary / verbatim theatre. So the last and final thing that we're going to look at is style. Now, remember, style is the way in which something is performed. We, over the course of this year, have looked at 2 particular styles. One is naturalistic, and the second is non-naturalism. Naturalistic theatre is as close to real life as possible. If they were going to be drinking a cup of coffee, they would have the cup of coffee on stage. If they were going to turn on a light switch, they would have the light switch and the light to turn on. If a phone rings, they would have an actual phone ringing on stage. In non-naturalistic theatre, we would use many elements to help us remind ourselves that we're watching a show. We would have physical theatre, we could use mime, we could use direct audience address, breaking that fourth wall. There are many non-naturalistic techniques that we would use in non-naturalistic theatre. So the style of Missing Dan Nolan is non-naturalistic. Whilst the storyline and the words on paper are naturalistic, the way in which it is performed, remember that's what style means, is non-naturalistic. Throughout the play, there are many stage directions about the way in which it should be performed. At the very, very beginning on page 13 in section 1, it says that we see Dan drinking a bottle of vodka in slow motion. Slow motion is a non-naturalistic technique. It's reminding us that we're not watching real life, that we are watching a performance. So some non-naturalistic techniques that we see used throughout this play: physical theatre, mime, flashbacks, transitioning from one scene to the next, multi-use of props / symbolic use of prop. Just to clarify what a symbolic use of prop is, if I had a walking stick and I was using it as a walking stick, that's its actual purpose. But if I had a walking stick and I was using it to symbolize a fishing rod, that would be a symbolic use of props. A multi-locational set, this set needs to show the location of the pontoon, it needs to show the location of Dan's house, and so on. Also, we have projection. We use projection ourselves in teenagers. They use projection in this to show pictures of Dan Nolan from when he was younger. So to recap then on the form, genre, structure and style of Missing Dan Nolan. So the form, a type of written drama, for example, a play, musical, pantomime. Dan Nolan is a play. The genre, a type of story that is being told, for example, a comedy, horror or a tragedy. The genre of Missing Dan Nolan is documentary / verbatim theatre. Remember, verbatim theatre is a subgenre of documentary theatre. The structure, the shape of the play's narrative, including the order in which it is shown to an audience, it is non-linear. And the style of the play, the way in which a play is performed, is non-naturalistic. Don't get genre and style confused. So moving on to that second success criteria then, to be able to explain how the form, genre, structure and style is evident within the play Missing Dan Nolan. So in order to be able to achieve that and show me that you can, you need to answer these 4 questions. You will find the sheet attached to the homework. I would like you to fill that in on the document and send it to me, and I will be able to see whether you are able to explain. What's next? So now that you've finished the 4 questions, I would like you to watch the next video, which is lesson 3 part 2. You could also click here and it will take you straight to the video. In that, you need to watch it, and that's where you're going to answer an exam question.